Hello again and welcome back to the channel. Now during the last week or so I've been really busy running a Nightscape photography exhibition, and it was a pretty big undertaking, but I was amazed at the amount of people who attended and supported my work. I met a lot of old friends and made plenty of new ones during the event, some even traveling very long distances to be there. So thank you so much for your great encouragement. It means a lot. Now, one of the things I had available to buy at the exhibition were these USB drives, and they contain over 300 of my images and time lapses. Now, I wanted a product that inspired people to see the beauty that I see every time I get out there under the stars. So it's about a 30-minute video, and it shows a large selection of my images set to an uplifting soundtrack of inspirational music. Now, I still have some of these available if you're interested. I'm selling these for $25, Australian dollars that is, and I can post it out to anyone, but the postage costs are a little bit higher outside of Australia, just due to custom charges. But one good thing is that the Australian dollar is very low at present. So, for example, you guys over in the United States, you can get one of these very cheaply, even accounting for postage costs. Anyway, if you're interested, let me know and we can organise something. All right, so let's move on to the subject of today's video. Now, here in Australia, the Milky Way galactic core is very low down on the western horizon just after sunset at the moment. And I was keen to get back out to a location I'd scouted about a month ago. Now, because I'd been so busy, I hadn't been able to return until this week. Now, the image I was wanting to shoot would have been a little bit different to my usual work, but you know what? I just love trying challenging and unusual things every now and then. So I loaded up the car and began the 45-minute trip to the location. Now, it was still twilight at this stage and the landscape was looking beautiful as I drove through the country district. Now, I must admit that I really do enjoy these journeys to these locations, especially at this time of night. Anyway, as always, I had this spot saved in my GPS. So even though it was well and truly off the beaten track, I was easily able to find it in the fading light. As I was driving, I could feel a fairly strong wind buffeting the car, and in the back of my mind, I knew this would create a challenge with my intended composition. But not to be deterred, I continued on. The location I was coming back to was right alongside a railway line, and my subject was a simple fence post. Yes, you heard that right. I came all the way back to this spot to shoot a fence post under a setting Milky Way galaxy. But it wasn't just about the old fence post. You see, recently the railway tracks have been replaced, and I'd noticed on my previous scouting trip that a huge heap of these old railway spikes had been thrown into a heap at the base of the fence post. And it was these railway spikes that really drew my attention. It was an instant attraction, but would I be able to capture the essence of this beautiful Australian scene at night? Well, that was the challenge, but it was one I knew I wanted to tackle. So, as I arrived at the location and began to work out the angles, it was really obvious to me that I had to get my camera right down low to the ground. I needed to make sure the fence post would stand tall in the image, but at the same time, I didn't want to lose the impact of the railway spikes. It would prove to be a more difficult composition than I first thought. Oh, and did I mention the wind? It was blowing an absolute gale, and that would be a problem for a number of reasons. Firstly, the long grass was blowing all over the place, and secondly, I was intending to use a star tracker to capture the setting galactic core. So my first task was to do a spot of gardening on the site. I mean, let's face it, no one was going to miss a bit of long grass out there, would they? Now, it took a while, but I think removing the high grass right alongside the post did certainly help minimize the movement in the scene from the wind. And thankfully, there weren't any trees close to this post in the frame. So my next job was to work out my camera settings. Again, due to the wind, I kept my shutter speed quite fast, probably around 4 or 5 seconds. Now this would give me ample time to add some light painting without getting too much overspill on that moving grass in the background. The other problem I was having was making sure everything was in focus. Now I'd already decided that a 35mm lens would be the best option for this shot. And that's mainly because I wanted to get a lot of detail in those tiny railway spikes, and at 20mm, they were just too small in the frame. Now, one approach would have been to focus stack the whole scene from front to back. And to be honest, I did try that with an aperture of f5.6. But after shooting for a while, I decided to change my approach a little bit. I did take one shot at infinity focus to capture the background. But as far as the foreground shots were concerned, I stopped down the aperture to about f10 and made sure my focus was sharp on the post and the railway spikes. So I was pretty close to the fence, but this setup seemed to be working well for the 35mm focal length. So I continued to do my fine art light painting on the scene from front to back. And it was looking pretty good on the back of the camera, but I knew I had to keep the pace up because the moon was due to rise in about 30 minutes. And so I had to get my tracker set up and ready to go. You know, it's funny how you get into the flow of things after a while, and that's exactly how it was for me out there on a blustery night under the stars. Now, as you know, light painting is something I love to do, and this was certainly no exception. My creative juices really flow on nights like this. Anyway, I needed to get the tracker set up to capture the setting Milky Way core over the scene. Because of the wind, I made sure it was close to the back of the car. I raised the tailgate to help create a bit of a wind break and mounted my Star Adventurer Mini on the tripod. Now at this stage, I was really racing against time, as I knew I only had minutes before the moon would rise on the opposite horizon and actually spoil my chances of capturing a dark sky. Well, I didn't need to worry. It all went to plan, and I was really happy with the tracked shot that I got. It was a single exposure at 35mm, f2.8 aperture and 60 seconds, and the ISO set to 1600. I think setting up with the car as a windbreak helped a lot because it just stopped that wind from getting all the way through the scene. But as I was sorting out everything just after I took the shot, the moon began to rise above the railway line behind the car. Now, just that alone was a beautiful sight, and I was able to relax a little bit at this point and enjoy the view. Just then, a bright light appeared out of nowhere, and it was all happening out there. A freight train decided to pay me a visit with what seemed like dozens of carriages trailing off behind, obviously on its way from various farming and agricultural communities in the region. In some ways, it was a fitting end to my adventure out there under the stars that night, and I was really pleased with the images I was able to capture. So there you have it, my last Milky Way core images for 2023. It'll be back soon enough, but in the meantime, I'm pretty sure there'll be plenty of other interesting subjects to shoot through the Australian summer. So don't forget to contact me if you'd like to order one of my USB drives, or maybe even one of my 2024 calendars, because I still have a few of these left. So until the next video, you have a fantastic week. I'll see you then.